Hey everybody, Joe here, and take a trip with me back in time. I don't have a DeLorean or anything, I wish I did, but let's go back in time to the year 2002. It's the fall. You're in the Toys R Us parking lot because you're there to pick up one of the games that you've been dying to play. Something that a lot of people thought was not going to work. A lot of critics didn't think it was going to work. There were fears. But there was a little game studio called Retro Studios that knocked the socks off the gaming world and launched one of the biggest masterpieces of our modern generation. That game, ladies and gentlemen, is Metroid Prime. Now, you can tell I have a great affinity for this game. I remember being that little boy in 2002. I'd actually saved up my money. At the time, I believe I was just getting a weekly allowance, or I was asking my parents. I really don't remember. I'm not gonna lie, but I just remember going to Toys R Us after begging my parents to take me and picking up that game and instantly giving up because it was so hard for 13-year-old me. I didn't like it. The puzzle mechanics weren't clicking. The gameplay just wasn't for me. And I just moved on at that point. I moved on to Wind Waker, which came out a couple months later. Moved on to other GameCube games that were in my library. And what's surprising to me as well was I had played Metroid in the past. I played Metroid 2 on my Game Boy. I played Super Metroid on the SNES. Love those games. Something about Metroid Prime just wasn't clicking at first. I don't know if it was maybe my patience had ran thin with the franchise, but it wasn't until a few months later that I picked up the game again after I had beaten Wind Waker. I was asking my parents if I could buy a new game. They said no. You have too many games. Which was right. That's a trait I have, unfortunately. I drop games and pick them up at a later date. It wasn't until a few months after I started playing again that I really started to grow my love for this game. Maybe my patience had definitely gotten the best of me at first, but after watching videos of how to get past certain obstacles that were in my way, I eventually found myself fighting the main villain, being who else but Metroid Prime. Yeah, holy crap, for 14-year-old me at that time. Jeez, yeah, a year had passed since I had started that game again and beat it, but for 14-year-old me, that blew my mind. I think I spent a good 30 to 40 minutes fighting Metroid Prime until I finally beat her, but boy, was I ready to hop back in once I saw a new hard mode was introduced and the cycle began again. So is every Metroid game. And today, I'm here to talk to you about this glorious remaster. Even though there were leaks galore leading into the reveal that happened on February 8th, nothing could prepare me as a Metroid fan for what was actually shown that day, and to see Samus in pure, glorious HD. It was just, this game is not a remaster, as much as anyone will say it is. It is a remake. I don't care that it says remaster on the title. That is a pure remake. Just the graphics and the gameplay, how fine-tuned everything is, down to the nitty-gritty. Metroid has never felt better. Honestly, the closest thing I can relate this to is seeing a friend you haven't seen in such a long time and just all the waves and nostalgia and just the love for what you had for that game back in the day just come back to you. Sure, I played the Wii remaster, but I don't think I was at a point in my life where I could truly appreciate that game. And now being in my early 30s and having what has almost been over 20 years since I played the original game, it's astounding to see how much gaming has changed, but hasn't at all. It's crazy to think that the original Metroid Prime came out in 2002 and still holds up just as well as it did that very same time period. I mean, gaming was very different in the early thousands. Controls were stiff. It was still getting to the point where you had free-flowing controls with certain games. But Metroid Prime was one of the first games to really break that barrier. And 20 plus years later, it's done it again. Amazingly, and not so surprisingly, seeing as Nintendo's have been masters of their craft for years. There's a reason why Metroid Prime is still heralded as one of the greatest games of a modern generation, and it just perfected the formula. Zelda had done it before, and Ocarina of Time does have a say in being one of the greatest games ever made, but Metroid Prime just took gate locking and opened it up to a whole other level. It felt more free-flowing, just as any of the other Metroids had before it, but now in a 3D space. That was very rare for the time the game came out. So to get into it, basically right from the jump, you get on the spaceship, you know where you're going. If you've played this game, you know you're gonna go fight the Parasite Queen. Feeling those controls for the first time, pure chef's kiss. I played remasters before. I played plenty of them, even Nintendo remasters. This just felt so good in my hands. I couldn't put down the controller. I had work at 5 o'clock in the morning and I was still playing at 3 o'clock. The game just had me hooked. And it had me hooked in a way I haven't been hooked to a game in such a long time. For those of you that are here that haven't played a Metroid game before, highly recommend that you guys pick up a Switch, or if you have a Switch, pick up either Metroid Dread, Metroid Prime Remastered. You can even play the older Metroid, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, which was just announced to the Nintendo Switch Online Game Boy Advance service, which I still need to get, but highly recommend any game in this series. They are all masterpieces, all in their right. But let's pour one out for the unfortunate one being Metroid Prime Other M. Sucked. So if you've played Metroid Prime before, you know the basics. You're wiped of pretty much all of your essential powers. You're left pretty bare bones, and you need to work your way back up. You need to get your power-ups. You need to traverse the land, and the more power-ups that you get, the more that land will unlock. Well, we could call it land, we could call it map, whichever. Those areas consisting of Talon Overworld, Chozo Ruins, Magmore Caverns, the always beautiful Phendrana Drifts, and the always present danger of Phazon Mines. My favorite of all 5 of those locations has got to be Phendrana Drifts. Just the snowy landscape, the music, the atmosphere. It just feels so alone and isolated. It's a special location for me as a gamer. I mean, I can play that tune, that soundtrack, I could play it over and over again, and I'll never get bored of it. And also holds the best boss fight in the game by far. Speaking about bosses, Metroid Prime has some of the best boss fights that you can find in video games. I could go on and on about the Battle of Metroid Prime, Battle of Ridley this past time. I played 100%. I also did not die on my first playthrough, which was crazy, but I really sweated during the Battle of Ridley. I had to grip my controller very tight. I kind of forgot how to beat him, and it felt weird because I had done it so many times at this point. And then on top of that, the battle right after that is against Metroid Prime, and she's still as tough as I remember her. I think I only had about 2 energy tanks left, which, I mean, it wasn't like I was down to my last, but still, it was a tough fight. And honestly, when those credits rolled, I felt very accomplished, and I just couldn't wait to start again. Just like how I felt when I originally beat the game. It's crazy to think that 20 plus years, you could still have that same feeling that you had when you were a kid. That's nostalgia. I love it. So to sum up everything into a nice, tight little bow, this game is just a general masterpiece. It's still as great as I remember it, and I'm sure if you've played it and you have not yet picked it up, it's going to be just as great as you remembered when you were a kid or when you were a young adult and you played. But if I had to give it, out of 10 stars, out of 5 stars, whichever, it's a 10 out of 10. It could even go 11 out of 10. It's that good. I could be nitpicky on a few little things, but Nintendo, even though it's not like they just created this game, but they once again have a masterpiece on their hands. And I'm so happy that a new generation of gamers can get to experience this game and fall in love with the Metroid franchise. And I can't wait to see what they cook up for Metroid Prime 4. And honestly, I can't wait till the next remaster comes out, which is, it's crazy to say. I mean, I love Metroid Prime, but I think I love its sequel, Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, a lot more. And that game holds another special part of my life, and it's also excelled me into becoming the gamer I am today. And I just can't rave and gush enough about this franchise. I will always be a Metroid fan, and I hope you become one as well. I just want to thank every single person who has taken time out to watch this video and experience maybe a small bit of the passion that I have for the Metroid franchise. I hope hearing my passion will make you want to experience the franchise as well. I can't recommend these games enough. Any Metroid game, pick it up, play it. You'll fall in love. But this is Joe from Geekside Chats, signing off. Till next time, guys. Bye.